If you just searched why your air conditioner is running but not cooling the house, the honest answer is one most people do not expect. It is usually not a refrigerant problem at all. Far more often, a central air conditioner that runs all day without cooling is starving for airflow. A filthy filter, an iced-over evaporator coil, or an outdoor unit packed solid with grass and dirt. Every one of those is cheap or free, and you can check most of them yourself in the next 10 minutes. So let us figure out which one you are actually looking at before you pay somebody to guess. Before you call anybody, there are 2 free readings that tell you almost everything you need to know. The first one is outside. Walk out to the condenser unit sitting beside your house and hold your hand over the top where the fan is. A working air conditioner blows hot air straight up out of that fan because its whole job out there is to dump the heat it pulled from inside your house. If the fan is spinning but the air coming off the top feels cool, or just like regular outside air, the unit is not actually moving any heat. That points at the compressor not pumping, or a refrigerant problem. And we will get to both. If the whole outdoor unit is dead and silent, then it is electrical, and that is usually a cheap fix too. The second reading is the temperature split. Hold a thermometer at a supply vent, the one blowing air into a room, and then at a return grill, the big one that sucks air back in. Let the system run about 15 minutes first. A healthy air conditioner makes the supply air roughly 15 to 20 degrees colder than the return air. If your split is way under that, the system is not moving enough heat, and that tells you the trouble is airflow or low refrigerant rather than a bad thermostat. Now, one thing that is not broken at all, even though it sends people into a panic every summer. If your house was already hot when you turned the air conditioner on a 95-degree afternoon, that system has to pull the heat out of your walls, your floors, and your furniture before the number on the thermostat will really move. That can take most of a day. And on a truly brutal afternoon, an air conditioner pulling in 85-degree air might only push out 65-degree air. That is just how the physics works. Cranking the thermostat down to 60 does not make the air any colder either. It only tells the unit to run without ever shutting off, which on a hot or humid day can actually freeze the whole thing solid. Okay, let us go through the actual causes, starting with the ones that are cheap and easy to rule out. Start with the filter, because it is behind more no cooling calls than anything else on this whole list. A clogged air filter starves the airflow the entire system depends on. Pull yours out and hold it up toward a bright window. If you cannot see much light coming through, that is your problem, or at least a big part of it. In most homes, there is just one filter, and it lives in a return grill in a hallway or a ceiling, not inside the outdoor unit, which trips a lot of people up. One warning here, because it genuinely catches people out. If you went and bought the densest, highest rated filter on the shelf and forced it into a thin 1-inch slot, you can smother the airflow every bit as much as a dirty filter does. If you want that heavy-duty filtration, you need the wider 4-inch filter housing to go with it. Otherwise, a mid-grade pleated filter, swapped out monthly during cooling season, is the sweet spot. If you pulled the filter and found ice, stop right there and look at the indoor coil and the copper lines. A frozen evaporator coil blocks the airflow completely, and then warm air is all you get. Here's what you do about it. Turn the system to off at the thermostat, but switch the fan setting to on. That blows room temperature air across the coil and melts the ice off it. A light frost clears in a couple of hours. A coil buried in ice can take most of the day. And I mean it about shutting the cooling off, because running the compressor while the coil is frozen is how you destroy it, and a new compressor is an $1,800 to $3,500 afternoon. Once it thaws, you have to find out why it froze. 9 times out of 10, it is that filter again. If it freezes right back up with a clean filter in place, that is pointing at low refrigerant, which is a job for a pro. Next is the outdoor unit itself, the condenser. Its whole job is to throw the heat from your house out into the air, and it cannot do that if the coil around the outside is caked with grass clippings, cottonwood, and dryer lint, or crowded in by shrubs. Cleaning it is genuinely easy and mostly free. Cut the power at the disconnect box first. Then rinse the coil down with a regular garden hose on a gentle setting. Do not reach for a pressure washer, because those fins are soft aluminum and the force folds them flat, which chokes the airflow worse than the dirt ever did. If you can lift the top fan panel off, usually about 4 screws. Spray from the inside outward so the dirt exits the same way it came in. Now a quick word on this because it is all over YouTube. There is a wildly popular video that hoses down the coil and shows the vent temperature drop 10 degrees on camera instantly. That drop is partly a magic trick. A soaking wet coil is chilled by the water evaporating off it, so the reading looks amazing while it is wet and then creeps right back up once it dries out. Cleaning the coil is real useful maintenance. Just do not trust a thermometer reading until the thing has been dry for about an hour. And skip the dish soap that people love to squirt on there. It is sticky, it leaves a film that traps dirt faster, and the harsher cleaners eat away at the aluminum. Plain water handles light dirt or a foaming coil cleaner made for the job. Here is a question the popular videos almost never answer, and the comments are always full of it. What if it runs all day and never reaches the set point, or the air at the vents just feels weak? That is almost never a dead compressor. Weak airflow plus constant running is the classic signature of a filter, an iced coil, or your ductwork. In a typical house, somewhere between a fifth and a third of the cooled air leaks out of the ducts before it ever reaches a room, especially where a flexible line runs through a hot attic and one has slipped loose. And if it is cool everywhere except one room, or the whole upstairs stays warm, that is not a broken unit either. That is a balancing problem, a damper that drifted shut, a leaky duct on that one branch, or just a long run out to a far room. You fix that by adjusting the balancing dampers in small steps and giving each change a day before you judge it. While you are chasing settings, do not skip the thermostat, because a couple of the dumbest causes live right there. Dead thermostat batteries have stopped many an air conditioner cold, and a fresh set brings it right back to life. Make sure it is set to cool and not to heat or off. And if you have a programmable or smart thermostat, check that a background schedule is not quietly bumping your set point back up an hour after you set it. Putting it on hold stops that. One more setting matters more than people think. Set the fan to auto instead of on. That way it only runs while the system is actually cooling, so the water on the coil has time to drain away. Leave the fan running constantly and it re-evaporates that water back into your house, which makes the place feel warm and clammy, even when the temperature is fine. And sometimes the unit is perfectly good, and the house is the actual problem. Open windows let hot air pour in as fast as you can cool the place, and a leaky, poorly sealed house does the same thing more quietly. People burn a whole service call on a system that runs non-stop and barely keeps up, when the real issue is that the cooled air is leaking straight back outside through gaps and bad insulation. And if your air conditioner has struggled to keep up since the day it was installed, regardless of its age, it may simply be undersized for the square footage of your home, and no filter or recharge is going to fix that one. Let me tell you about the cause that costs people the most money for no reason at all. Say the outdoor fan is spinning, but the compressor never kicks on, so nothing is actually getting cooled. A big share of the time, that is a dead-run capacitor. That is the part that stores up the burst of power the fan and the compressor need to get moving, and when it dies, the motors just sit there. Most units use one dual capacitor for both, and the compressor half can quit while the fan half keeps right on spinning, which is exactly why the unit looks like it is running fine when it is not. I have watched a repair company quote a homeowner $680 to swap that one part. It runs about $25 at a parts counter. Even paying a technician to handle it, you are usually looking at $150 to $350 all in. That is the repair bill that did not need to happen. If you tackle it yourself, cut the power and discharge the capacitor first, because there is still stored voltage inside it even after you have flipped the breaker. A couple more cheap electrical culprits live right next to it. A burnt or pitted contactor, which is the relay that sends power out to the condenser, will chatter or just fail to pull in and start the unit. A blown fuse in that outdoor disconnect box is a $10 part that has stranded people for a whole day of head scratching. And a lot of systems have a small float switch sitting on the condensate drain. When that drain line clogs up with algae and the water backs up, the float rises and shuts the entire system off on purpose, so it does not overflow and flood your ceiling. The fix is to clear that drain line, and you can suck it out with a shop vacuum or flush it through with a cup of vinegar. Which brings us last to the expensive one, refrigerant itself. And I want to be blunt about this because the whole industry stays fuzzy on it. The refrigerant in your system runs in a closed loop that never empties on its own. Nothing burns it off and nothing wears it down. So if somebody tells you it is low, what that actually means is there is a leak somewhere letting it escape, which is why anybody who just tops off your freon and drives away is quietly selling you the exact same repair again next summer, because that recharge is going to leak right back out in 6 to 18 months. A proper recharge on today's R410A refrigerant runs a couple $100 to $600, plus the labor to actually find and seal the leak. There is one clue you can check yourself. That thick insulated copper line running to the outdoor unit should be sweating with condensation when the system is running right. If it is bone dry or crusted with frost, suspect low refrigerant. This one puts you squarely in licensed technician territory, and those stop leak cans on the parts store shelf are not a real fix. I have watched a technician write up a big recharge on a system whose only real problem was a filter nobody had swapped since spring. So before you spend that kind of money, walk back through the cheap stuff in order. Pull the filter and actually look at it. Put your hand over the outdoor fan and feel for hot air. Clear out the condensate drain and check the coil over for ice. Then take that supply to return temperature split again. Most of the time you land on something simple long before you ever reach the sealed system. If you do get all the way to the compressor and it is genuinely locked up, an older unit that hums and trips the breaker instead of starting, that is the one case where the honest answer might really be a new system. A hard start kit can sometimes squeeze another year or two out of it, but if the compressor is already locking up, the problem usually comes right back. That is one of the few times the answer really is to call a pro and start talking replacement. If your system pointed you at a specific part while you work through all this, a filter size, a coil cleaner, a fin comb to straighten out those bent fins on the condenser, the ones genuinely worth buying are linked below, so you are not standing in a store aisle comparing boxes. Work the checks from the top down, and there is a very good chance you clear this up with a fresh filter and a garden hose and never spend $1 on the part you were dreading.